Hello, friends. It's again great to meet you again. We have been discussing the two civilizations, the Indic and the modern civilizations. Having compared the two, we found some very interesting aspects to the Indic civilization. And then we decided let's check the antiquity of the Indic civilization. And in that context, we checked out a few sources like the house mice, which all over the world originate from India. We found out that the Zebu breed or the Bos indicus is popular across the world and is the oldest breed in the world and very popularly and commonly found, and again originating from India. We also checked out that the origins of rice predates any other finds anywhere else in the world, again in India. Apart from the fact that the oldest farm was found in Mehergarh and those kind of things. Today we'll look at one more candidate for antiquity, and this time we're going to depend upon a river and a book. Yes, the river is Saraswati River, and the book is the Rig Veda. So when we check out the Rig Veda, and on this one, I'm going to largely depend upon the excellent research work done by Dr. Shrikant Talageri. If you guys ever get a chance, please do Google him or search him on the net and check out his clips and his works and his books. Very informative and very useful, and it's a lot of years of painstaking research. Once again, we owe this information to him. In the Rig Veda is like one of the oldest such a collection of books that has been found anywhere in the world. It's once again with the book we go back to oldest, but then for some reasons the Western society or the Indologists, they have dated the Rig Veda to be in 1500 BC. There are certain dubious reasons why they do that. One of them is the fact that they felt the Indian civilization could not be that antique, because for them, because as the Bible says, 4000 BC is when the world got created. So anything prior to that seems almost implausible. So apart from that, they also chanced upon the Indus Valley civilization, and because they could not correlate the two in terms of textual and written script, they then tried to say the Rig Veda must have been after that. And that is where they position it at 1500 BC, and they claim that our civilization currently has been coming on from 1500 BC because the Aryans came into India at that time and then they wrote the Rig Veda. Now, that's all actually completely disproved now. And I'll tell you why and how. One of such factor is the book itself, the Rig Veda. Now, if we look at the Rig Veda, it's essentially a combination of 10 books, which are called as 10 mandalas. And these 10 mandalas from number 1 to 10, even though we would arrange them in 1 to 10, the chronology of the 1 to 10 is not exactly the way in timeline in which it has been written. Because the oldest books are maybe number 2, number 4, and 7 and 6 and that way, and then so on. And then the latest book has been the number 10 book. And in all of these books, there's been a lot of reference to number of rishis, and looks like each rishi's family, as they went on, they've written, and they've been written over a very long period of time. Why? Because even the language in these books, they seem to be shifting and changing as time goes on, and you can see that shift very clearly there. Now, in a small country like Greece, because of the shift in language, the change in language over a period of time is something like 300 years, they assigned the same thing to the Rig Veda and said the Rig Veda would have been written somewhere from 1500 BC to 1200 BC. But then, for a large area like India, which had a very large civilization with a very large population, this kind of change takes much longer. And for example, in the older versions, the word night is referred to as Nacht. And you will find that that is the origin of the word Nacht in German for night. And that is from where you get night in Latin, in English, for the word night. But in India today, we use the word Ratri. Nacht is only used to call nakshatra or the night stars and all those kind of things. But otherwise, the more commonly used is Ratri. Why? Because the language in the later books, you'll find Ratri, and the Ratri for night has continued in India even today. But Nacht has been lesser in use because Nacht was from the older versions of the books. And that was definitely has to be sometime 4000 BC to 3000 BC and prior. Why? Because if the word Nacht went across to Europe but the word Ratri did not go. That means the people somewhere separated, and then they separated, or travelers from India to that place took this language, and those early words got incorporated into Greek, Latin, and those kind of things. So that is one indication that it has to be at least 4,000 years prior. But we look at another very compelling evidence, and that is the Saraswati, the mention of Saraswati in the Rig Veda. Now you see, in the Rig Veda, the river Saraswati has been deeply venerated. They have taken this mother Saraswati as the backbone of the civilization, and they have written hymns in praise of the river. It has been mentioned multiple times, far more numerous times than they mention the river Indus. The river Indus is mentioned probably 92 or 96 times, while the Saraswati is mentioned a few hundred times in the Rig Veda. And they describe the river as flowing from the mountains to the sea continuously. And then this river is copious and flowing copiously, and sometimes at certain places its two banks are 11 miles apart, which means the width of the river is 11 miles, and you can imagine how many kilometers that is, and that's a very, very wide range of the river. And flowing in that majestic form is this river, and this has been avidly described. The Saraswati the Rig Veda can be very clearly seen as having been written on the banks of the river Saraswati. But the river Saraswati was extant and could not be found in India at that for a long period. So what was as surmised was that the Saraswati was somewhere else and they could never find it. And various theories were forwarded. But now, due to a lot of paleontological research and the geology and NASA satellite imagery and all that, the dried up riverbed of Saraswati can be found all the way from the Himalayas to the Ran of Kutch, going down through the whole process, and then at the Ran of Kutch meeting into the sea. Now, if you notice and then it is very evident that the Saraswati, at once upon a time, he had the rivers Satluj, Ravi, and Bias, and Yamuna, all converging into the Saraswati, and that was from 15,000 BC. Somewhere between 50,000 BC to 10,000 BC, the river Yamuna, from flowing westward due to a tectonic or earthquake or something, it changed its course and started going east and started joining the Ganges, the Ganga river. So the flow of Yamuna stopped going into the Saraswati. And also the melting of the ice, the glaciers which was feeding to the river, also started coming down. But then you still had Bias, Satluj, and Ravi, these rivers flowing into the Saraswati till about 10,000 BC. After 10,000 BC, these rivers went also westward and started flowing into the Indus River. That is 10,000 BC. So roughly around 7,000 BC, it's quite evident that the Saraswati River had become a monsoonal river. So that means it is in spate during the monsoon period, but then at the other times it is calmer. And then that went on till about 1900 BC, when the Saraswati River was almost ending in the Thar Desert. It was no more reaching the sea. And by 1500 BC, the river had completely dried up. Now correlate this thing from your textual evidence. The Rig Veda talks of this river flowing from the Himalayas to the seas and copiously flowing throughout the year like a perennial river. Has to be sometime from 50,000 BC to 10,000 BC. So the Rig Veda had to be written at that time, because it never mentions the Saraswati as a seasonal river at all. The seasonality of Saraswati comes up later on in epics like the Mahabharata, where it does say the Saraswati does not flow to the sea and ends up in the desert. And also the Saraswati is intermittent. Sometimes it seems to go underground and then comes up overground again at other places. So it is very clear that even Balarama during the Mahabharata Yudh, actually goes off on a pilgrimage to avoid the war, and his pilgrimage is on the banks of the river Saraswati, and he goes right up to the end where it meets and ends up in the desert, and then he returns from there. So you see, these all textual evidences point to the time as to how a relationship of the civilization with the river Saraswati, and you can see how antiquated it is. So these things once again goes to prove that the river Saraswati would have been something like the Rig Veda had to be something like 7,000 BC and prior. So obviously it had to be at a time when the river was perennial. And going by that, it is anytime 10,000 to 50,000 BC in that period. That is why certain Indologists also try to place the Indic civilization starting from 23,000 BC or 25,000 BC. But it is definitely 15,000 to 10,000 BC is when this book must have been written, because a lot of evidence points to that. As time goes on, probably we'll find more evidence, but then we find these very interesting things. And I hope you enjoyed this session, friends. Till we meet again, where we go to compare a few other things from the civilizations and enjoy our journey. Thank you very much. See you again. Bye.